Alex, welcome to the 100X show.
Hey, Mary. Thanks for having me.
Just to kick things off, Alex, why don't you tell us, our audience, a little bit about yourself and how you got into crypto?
Yeah, so my background is in artificial intelligence. Been working in that area since 2010 when I graduated from university in Edinburgh, Scotland. Um, I worked as a data scientist, management consultant for a little while, and a data science manager. And in 2017, I discovered Ethereum after having ignored Bitcoin for many years, not believing it would manifest into something interesting. But it's for some reason Ethereum was a bit interesting to me beyond, how I viewed Bitcoin, and I fell down the rabbit hole pretty quickly, mid 2017, right before the ICO boom started, and basically left my job as a data science manager in Barcelona to move to Hong Kong, where I started working with a startup and built out a data team there. And that startup unfortunately failed, like many other ICO startups. But it was an educational experience for me. And the end of 2019, I ended up co-founding a company together with my two co-founders, Evgeny and Lars, and that company is called Nansen. So what we do is it's a blockchain analytics platform. We have the best overview on what actually happens in real time on blockchains, from Ethereum to Phantom to Avalanche, Ronin, lots of other blockchains. But we have an emphasis on smart contract platforms. And so our customers basically use the platform to better understand, what's happening in the market. So they can discover new opportunities like NFTs, tokens that are hot, that smart money is investing in. They can perform due diligence and, guide their decision making on whether or not they should invest by looking at these different assets that they discover. And they can also set up alerts so that they get notifications when, for example, a large investor or large holder of a token makes a transaction.
So, Alex, before we jump deeper into the platform, I would also love to learn a bit more about your inspiration. Like, what was the inspiration that led you to found Nansen, and also how would you describe like one or two things about Nansen that just differentiates it's from other data platform and anything else out there in the market?
Yeah, I think there are a few different inspirations, actually. I mean, from a technological perspective, I'm a data person and my two co-founders are as well. So we are generally, interested in working with cutting edge data analytics, machine learning, and things like that. So there was definitely some impetus from that angle, just feeling that, there wasn't a clear market leader in this area. And perhaps we could be the company that would step up and make the best analytics platform out there. I think the other inspiration came from just the market. Like people didn't have good analytics tools, and a lot of people were asking us, especially about this idea of, who's behind certain wallets that you see on the blockchain. Back then, you still had some services like whale alerts, where you would see here's a tweet that automatically goes out if someone moves like $100 million worth of tether. But most of the time, it was unknown who was behind that. And the thing that resonated with people a lot, always when I spoke with them, people working at the trading desks or OTC desks or just individual kind of retail plus investors in crypto, was that they really like this idea of figuring out like who's behind the different wallets. And so that sort of nicely solved a problem for me as well from a strategy perspective, because I wanted to build a platform around on-chain data. But how do you build a company that is defensible, that has a moat, when you're building purely on public data? That was a bit of a puzzle for me. But then this notion that you could actually enrich that data with wallet labels and help people figure out like who's behind the different wallets, how can you categorize the different wallets in a meaningful way, that is a proprietary layer on top of the on-chain data. So I think in that sense, that's the key sort of both strategic insight and technological insight that caused us to create Nansen. And at this point, we have more than 120 million addresses labeled up in different ways. Many of them are entity labels, but some of them are also behavioral labels like smart money or smart NFT, minter, and things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much the inspiration.
So Alex, I don't know if you have the liberty to answer me this. So like, how do you guys go about and label these contracts? Like, what's the process like? Is it research incentive? Is it through network? Like, how do you guys find those whales of those like smart money and then
Yeah.
label it?
Yeah, don't worry. It's a very common question. I get this a lot. So there's no silver bullet. It's not like, oh, we have this magic algorithm, here it is, and now you can go and replicate it, right? It's more like almost like an industrial process that involves a lot of different elements, and it's a combination of man and machine. So most of the labels are actually algorithmically created, but those algorithms are created by software engineers, data engineers, machine learning engineers that work at Nansen, and research analysts as well. And so that's the sort of algorithmic side. And just to give you an example, and there are lots of different heuristics, lots of different algorithms. But if you wanted to tag up Binance wallets, on the one hand, you could go on like Etherscan and find maybe the 15, 20 main wallets that are controlled by Binance. But what about all the wallets that users use to send their funds to Binance, right? When you have an account on Binance, you send your funds to a dedicated address that you own, or you don't actually own it, but it's your dedicated address on Binance. How do we know that that is actually a Binance custodial wallet? And that's where you have to research how the different exchanges, manage their wallets. And then we have algorithms that tag up the wallets based on that. So that means we don't have just 15, 20 wallets from Binance. No, we have 3, 4, 5 million addresses from Binance, or more at this point. I haven't looked at the latest numbers. And then there are lots of different algorithms and heuristics for the different areas that you look into. We also have a lot of manual input. We have both internal team members who work on this. Pretty much they work in shifts, because we have people all over the globe, so they can monitor our internal dashboards that we've created to surface what are the addresses that we really need to be tagging, because a lot of people are using them now. They have a lot of capital inflow, etc. And so there's a whole machinery or process internally to tag up manual addresses as well. And then we have a bit of a network effect with our customers, because our customers are the smartest investors in crypto. And so they will let us know if we're missing labels, right? If it's a new DeFi protocol, a new NFT collection, and for whatever reason our team hasn't picked it up, they can submit that. And so there's a network effect and a feedback loop with our community as well. So I think those are maybe the 3 overall areas. There are a few more, but high level, that's how I would describe it.
Yep. That was great. So Alex, maybe can you just show us visually some of the trends that in the market you see via using Nansen, so we can maybe see some of the trends in the market, maybe DeFi and NFT.
Sure. Yeah, happy to do that. Let's see. So I can share my screen here, because it's actually quite nice with Nansen. I don't like to wave my hands or do like PowerPoint presentations. I'm like, wow, what the product really is. I just show you the product, you can get an idea of what how it works. And also the other thing that's fun about showing the product is that, every time you open it, there's something new there. So I don't really know what we'll find now, but we can just poke around a bit in the platform and see what we discover. So this is the landing page when you have a paid Nansen account, a standard account, which costs you about $149 a month. And you can see a few different widgets here. So you see hot contracts. What this means is that these are smart contracts that were deployed in the last week, and we see smart money depositors basically interacting with these smart contracts. So Legend Maps Adventurers, I don't know what that is. Megakongs, don't know what that is either, but we could take a look at that afterwards. And these are in Ethereum. We also have a multi-chain hot contracts view, which combines like Phantom, Avalanche, Polygon, BNB chain. So you see, several different chains here. Midas DAO, Elk Finance, and so on. So, right away, there are some names that are popping up here that, you might not have heard about as a crypto investor, and now they're on your radar. So that's the first step, just doing basic discovery. And there's other elements here too, like NFT collections, right? So I think many people know Azuki at this point, one of
Yeah.
the blue chip NFTs. It's also the most traded NFT across the marketplaces that we track on Ethereum in the last 24 hours. But you also see other ones like Imposters, Genesis Aliens. Okay, interesting. Tiny Dinos, and so on. So that's like another area which we can drill
So when
into.
we say hot NFTs, is it based on the volume or is it based on the
Yeah.
interaction with the smart contract?
Yep. In this ranking, it's based on the volume. So it's just looking at how much volume, is traded. But actually, I can drill down on this, right? And almost everything you see in Nansen, you can keep drilling deeper, all the way down to individual transactions or individual addresses. But if I click through on this, you see NFT Paradise, which just ranks the most traded NFT collections in the last 24 hours. But we also have an indicator over here which says when this was deployed. So, for example, Tiny Dinos, the smart contract was deployed 7 days ago. This pre-mint collector was deployed 12 days, something 13 days. I think that's related to Azuki's as well. Los Muertos World 10 days, and so on. So you can, and then you have some stats, right? You have a market cap estimate based on how big the collection is and what the average or floor price is for the collection. You have an average price, you have a floor price, and you also have a change in floor price. And then the cool thing is you can keep drilling deeper. So maybe, well, you want to look at what's happening with Azuki, right? So you can click on this, and this will show you what we call NFT God mode, because you get this kind of all-seeing eye on the collection. And right away, you see a few things that are, pretty like macro metrics. There's an average price here, but there's also a min price and a max price on the day of trades, as well as an average price. And you can also see the trading volume. But you can keep going down and you can see, for example, individual transactions there. So, who's been buying Azukis in the last week or so? Well, it looks like there's a smart NFT sweeper. That's actually one of our new segments that we recently deployed. You have Hyperion.eth, who has also been tagged as a smart money buyer. And then you have another purchase from Hyperion.eth. And then you have a bunch of sort of addresses that had not been labeled smart money, at least not yet. There's about 4,000 or 5,000 smart money addresses in total, but of course there are maybe something like 150 or even 200 million Ethereum addresses. So it's a very small segment that classifies as smart money. But you can keep going down here and you can look at, well, who's been accumulating Azukis in the last 7 days? And so if I just allow this to load, because this is showing a cached result that was loaded 17 minutes ago, now we got a fresh view here. And so you can see Smarter LP has scooped up 11 Azukis, actually. That's pretty interesting. And they first started buying them 11 hours ago. So that's pretty cool. And I'd probably want to look at this, so I'm going to click on this and I'll just keep that in a tab for afterwards. You can also see Dingaling, who is one of the absolute top NFT investors. He's, or they, I'm not sure about the gender. I would guess statistically that it's a he. They own the most Bored Apes, for example, among any NFT holder. But you also see 6529 Museum transaction wallet. So I think this is the punk number 6529, who has a big Twitter account, probably related to that, has been scooping up a few as well. And you can see on the top balances, the top holders of Azukis, that there's a lot of smart money addresses here. And so these are basically the emojis with glasses. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 smart money addresses just among the top
So with
15.
this smart money, can we see their previous portfolio, some of the previous buys? Is that
Yeah,
possible within the platform?
absolutely. Yeah, so let's maybe drill down on a few of these. We can pick like Dingaling, we can look at Chile.eth, and I also had this Smarter LP that we looked at earlier that we don't know, we don't know who they are, but they have been classified as a smart LP. We could drill down to that a bit more afterwards. Here we just see an NFT overview of their wallet. So the way I think about Nansen, especially wallet profiler, is that when you look at the wallet profiler of a smart money address, it's almost like taking a master class, because these people, they have done really well trading on the blockchain. And if you could just figure out, hey, what are some of the stuff that they're doing, that's valuable lessons for you to learn from. Now, it doesn't mean that you should just blindly copy trade these, but you can educate yourself and try to learn from what these addresses are doing. And so what does their portfolio look like? They have 11 Azuki, one Doodle, one Ninja Squad, one Cypher Inu, and one Yield Guild badge. That's what we're seeing in their portfolio. And you can also see things like the liquidity score that we have given these collections. So Azuki has a high liquidity score because there's generally a lot of transaction volume, which means that we estimate that the total value of their Azukis is about 300 ETH. If they just wanted to go and sell them on the market, it's quite likely that they would be able to sell it for that price. But if something has a medium liquidity, it means that you might have to actually sell it for a bit lower because the market is not as liquid. So you can also go down and you can see the individual NFT transactions that they did. Looks like they actually they bought the Doodle as well 7 hours ago. So it looks to me, just looking at this address, that okay, they minted 2 NFTs, 200 plus days ago. So that's more than half a year ago. Then they haven't done much. They bought a Ninja Squad, and then just now they started scooping up a bunch of Azukis, and also they started buying. They bought one Doodle. So why is it smart money? Well, I think the reason it's smart money is actually for what they've been doing on the DeFi side. And so Smarter LP actually it comes from the fact that they're a smart liquidity provider. That's how they've been making their money. So this is a DeFi investor or DeFi yield farmer that hasn't been super active with NFTs, but they now decided to scoop up a bunch of Azukis, in the last 12 hours, effectively. So, now we just learned something. Obviously, as you can tell, I didn't prepare this case study in particular, but you can discover stuff like this all the time in our platform. You can also see some of their other tags, like they're a heavy DEX trader, they're a blue chip NFT holder. That actually could be because of the Azuki purchases. And they've also been active on other blockchains like CeLo, BSC, and Polygon. They've also been sandwich attacked, which is pretty common. We can go into that rabbit hole if you want. But you see some of the behavioral tags here as well. So let me just pause there and see if it makes sense so far.
It does, Alex. Thank you. Thank you for visually showing us how you can use the platform and some of the trends, at least on surface level for NFTs. So, Alex, I remember like a few months ago, you guys raised about 75 million, close to unicorn valuation. Uh, how are you thinking about deploying that capital? Like recently, we have seen trends with OpenSea and Uniswap getting into the venture side. Does Nansen has planned to get into the venture side? And I know you guys have an alpha product as well, which kind of ties in with the venture side of things as well. Would
Yeah.
love to learn more about how you're thinking about the future.
Yeah. So we are in the fortunate situation that we do have a sustainable business model, right? It's a pretty straightforward company in that sense. People pay to use the platform, and it's a product that a lot of people like to use, so they tend to continue using it as well once they've started, because it adds a lot of value for investors. And the good thing about that is we haven't really needed the capital that we raised so far. So, we were profitable last year. I think this year, I almost hope we won't be profitable because we want to grow the team, we want to invest more, and so on. So the idea is to grow primarily, not to be profitable, right? And so now we have a bit more than $90 million on the balance sheet. And we are working actively on the M&A side to make acquisitions. I can't comment too much on the specifics yet, but it's not unlikely that there will be some announcements in the near future. We don't have any. I think it's a bit too early for us to have a venture arm, but we are also working on a couple of strategic investments where we see that there's a unique opportunity for us to create value for a specific company that we can invest in. And so if you just think about the Web3 analytics area, we have the best on-chain data in the world. So if we can work with certain smaller companies, become an investor, and then provide them with our data, that can actually kind of allow them to hit the ground running, and just they don't have to build out their whole data infrastructure, which will take them a lot of time. Why not just tap into what we have built, and they can sort of build on our platform, so to speak. So we do have some interesting, again, like I think this one in a few weeks, there will be an announcement. So that's exciting, but we don't have a dedicated ventures arm yet. Like, we're still pretty young as a company. We're about 2 years old. I think it's almost exactly 2 years since we launched the product today, or in a few days, actually. So yeah, the capital primarily will be spent on hiring a much larger team, which allows us to scale faster, ship more great features for our customers, and also to open up the top of the funnel a bit more. We basically want to make more parts of the product free. So just from a business perspective, if we can grow the top of the funnel and have a lot of free users, some of those users will choose to convert to become paying customers. And so that's pretty much the business plan, right? We just want to keep growing in terms of active users, and there are different ways to get there. But building out a very strong team that can deliver great features quickly is the top thing. And like, it's probably no secret that the main expense we have as a company is just our payrolls, right? Like, having great people. So that's the primary use of the capital. And then I also believe that it doesn't always make sense to build everything from scratch. So if you can go out and acquire smaller teams who are building things that we think could be a great part of Nansen, then we are open to acquiring those companies or finding ways to invest in them. So that's the second use for the capital. And then, of course, as any other company, we have infrastructure costs, various different operational costs. But those are the two main items. Yeah.
You do have a product offering called Nansen Alpha, like where.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot that. So yeah, Nansen Alpha is a very popular product and offering. It's kind of more of a holistic offering, which goes beyond just the product. But effectively, what it is that you get access to the top version of the product, what we call the VIP version. So it has things like CSV downloads, it has advanced filtering options for the table, it has access to certain dashboards that are not available to everyone else, like hot contracts. And it also has generally early access to new features. Plus, it has more smart alerts than you get on the standard plan, which is a very popular and useful feature. So that's just the product side. But in addition, we have a team of research analysts that effectively, are monitoring the market. They're expert users of Nansen itself, and they create daily summaries of what's happening. They write deep dive reports on what's happening with different ecosystems. And we also have a community of these alpha customers who can discuss with each other, right? In Discord, we also have weekly calls that we run. And so you kind of get, I think of it as like, it's almost like leverage for your own both community and like research capabilities. And if you are a large individual crypto investor or a small crypto fund, that's kind of the sweet spot, I would say, in terms of segments that Nansen Alpha is suitable for, because probably you don't have your own like big research team. So we can help you with that. We have, amazing researchers working in our team. And we also, if you don't have sort of the capability to sort of go out and connect with any small early stage project or any counterparty that you might want to interact with as a small crypto fund or as an individual investor, we can help you with that as part of Nansen Alpha, because we have a really good network, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna double click on this part. So
Yeah,
as far as I remember, you guys arrange AMS sessions with the early stage project. So is
that's
it
right.
correct to assume after the AMS session, some of the fund managers or some of the investors can reach out to them for deal flow?
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
deals?
I mean, we don't really facilitate that. I mean, but obviously people can connect with these teams, and that's kind of what it's in it for them as well, right? And a project comes in there, they show what they're building, and typically from their perspective, they want two things. Um, they want to get more users of their product. So you can imagine if you're like an options trading platform or something, and you're just trying to get advanced users who understand DeFi to just start providing liquidity or trading on the platform. That's one thing. So in that sense, it's just sort of like a way to show off your product, almost like a marketing channel, right, for them. And then the other perspective is that sometimes they want to raise money, and so they might have a seed round, they might have a Series A or a pre-seed, and we don't facilitate any transactions in that sense, right? We don't have the licenses and so on to do that, but people can of course choose to reach out to these projects separately, and that's a pretty easy thing to do, and that's one of the reasons also why the alpha customers are interested in that offering.
All right, yeah, that gave us a very, very good overview of the Alpha product. Uh, so, Alex, now I want to pick your brains with regards to markets and different verticals of crypto. So, let's imagine we are in 2025. How do you kind of see different verticals within crypto evolving, starting from DeFi, NFT, gaming, metaverse, infrastructure? So, let's go over it one by one. How do you see all of these verticals evolving?
Yeah, I tend to say that Web3 gaming is the vertical that I'm most confident that it will thrive. Like I don't know, short term doesn't mean 1 month, right? But like, let's say a year or two from now, I think the Web3 gaming scene will flourish. There's going to be a lot of crap as well, to be honest, in that sector, because it's pretty easy to put together a deck and say that you're going to build some amazing MMORPG on the blockchain, and then to deliver it is a lot harder, right? So there's going to be a lot of failed projects too, no doubt. But I think it just makes so much sense. Like if I play Rocket League, like why shouldn't I be able to own these like skins or like trophies or whatever it is, and kind of pull them out of that system and maybe put them on a marketplace where they can be traded? It just makes so much sense that gaming has a future in Web3 where you can own things separately, you can move assets between different ecosystems and games on the blockchain. So to me, it's kind of just a no-brainer that it's going there. Um, Infrastructure, there's a lot of stuff to do, especially when it comes to multi-chain. So I used to think that Ethereum was going to be the one blockchain for everything. Now I have come to the conclusion that I think there's going to be multiple different blockchains that optimize for different things and are probably going to be useful for different use cases. And there's tons of infrastructure that just doesn't exist on many of these other chains, right? So this is an easy prediction over the next 1 to 2 years that you will just see lots of infrastructure plays for other blockchain ecosystems. I mean, in a way, Nansen is a good example of that, right? Where you can think of us as infrastructure too, where many users are not comfortable using a new blockchain because they don't have the insights that they need, the analytics, the explorers, etc. And so we can help them feel more confident so that they're not just transacting in the blind on this new blockchain. So I think that's another one where, if we think 2025, I mean, I think a lot of these blockchain ecosystems will have much richer infrastructure ecosystems as well. So blockchain explorers, many of them will probably be more natively multi-chain, which you don't really have right now. Like it's very siloed, right? You have Etherscan for Ethereum, and then Etherscan have their own clones for the other EVM chains. But they kind of, from the product perspective, they feel very siloed, I think, from the user perspective. And then other things, NFTs. I mean, I think we've only seen the tip of the iceberg, right, when it comes to NFTs. Profile pics are kind of the proof of concept that just shows that this is a fun thing. But going back to gaming, obviously NFTs is going to be huge in that area. NFTs is it's a so much bigger category than people realize, right? It's not just profile pics or JPEGs. It's so much more than that, right? So in
I don't
2025,
know. I don't know if
yeah.
you've heard about Stepin. Like I have this utility NFT when I'm walking, I'm earning money.
Oh,
Like it's a
cool.
play
Yeah.
to, like it's move to earn utility-based NFT that, like, if you move a lot or if you run, you can earn tokens. So I think there are very cool applications and crazy stuff happening on the NFT side.
Mm.
Not just apart from JPEG as well. You have things like conditional rendering. So anything that happens in real life, NFT basically dynamically changes its metadata and basically becomes dynamic. So there are cool things happening on the NFT front at the moment
Yeah,
as well.
100%. And I think maybe that's the real flippening, if you think about it. That in the beginning, people thought NFTs were just this kind of small, silly section of the crypto space. But actually, NFTs is the main thing that's bringing new people into the space. And maybe the real flippening is that NFTs are actually becoming the main sort of asset class, if you can call it that. It's not, there are so many different things that fall under NFTs that it's not really its own asset class, but NFTs will basically flip tokens in importance for the crypto ecosystem. So that's one thing that I would be, I mean, maybe it's a bit more uncertain prediction, but in 2025, I could see more activity around NFTs than just around like other fungible tokens. Um, and yeah, what else? I think let's see what happens in the world more broadly when it comes to inflation and the macro environment, right? But so far, stable coins have been, a huge success when it comes to usage. I think probably it will just continue to be successful. I think USDC will be assuming the US dollar is still the world reserve currency in 2025, which it probably will be. I think USDC is going to be the top one. It's going to flip Tether. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs in crypto in the short term, but like all in all, it's all trending up and to the right if you just zoom out enough.
Yeah, you didn't mention DeFi. So is it correct to assume you're not that bullish with
Okay.
regards to
No,
DeFi?
no, no. It's just there's just so much stuff going on in general. I mean, no, I'm extremely bullish on DeFi.
Okay.
I think DeFi now has kind of like fallen a bit into the background because of the NFT wave. But DeFi is truly revolutionary, right? I don't know if in 2025, it's actually, it's just like 3 years away. I don't know if banks will be totally replaced by DeFi in just 3 years. Probably not. But what I would predict for DeFi is that I think there's going to be a collision in a positive sense of fintech and DeFi. So at some point, I think that many fintech companies will basically replace their backends from the legacy finance system to DeFi. And so when you have money in like Revolut or Venmo or something like that, like why shouldn't you be earning interests from that? And why couldn't some of those interests be sourced from DeFi protocols? Right now, of course, there's a lot of regulatory aspects here and so on. But I think the way you get DeFi to mainstream is not to build like the third options protocol that you have to use MetaMask to connect to and is extremely confusing and so on. I think the way you make DeFi really big is by having it feed fintech applications. And in that sense, DeFi is kind of like the money Legos, and then the front ends will probably be built by maybe even what we consider not non-crypto companies, but they will start interfacing with DeFi protocols. And so in 2025, I would definitely expect that normal people using fintech apps, a lot of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes is actually powered by DeFi.
Okay. So basically, DeFi becoming a backend of the global financial system, or at
That's
least
right.
trying to become.
Yeah, I don't think normal people care about finance. I think most people, if you ask them, like, what's your interest rate in the bank, like, they have no idea. And so why should they care about DeFi, right? But it can still power all the financial products that they use day to day. Like, why not? But I don't think people really engage with DeFi as a category, normal people. Instead, they engage with JPEGs, NFTs, games, art, music. That's why NFTs generally, I think, will be a bigger category in terms of engagement and how many people use them. But DeFi will still be, the unsung hero in the background, powering a lot of great like fintech products and so on.
Yep, yep. I agree with you. Yeah, there'll also be very cool application in terms of DeFi amalgamating with NFTs and gaming and metaverse. Like you've started to see lending and borrowing of NFTs and tranches of NFTs being used for different DeFi applications. Alex, I know you're an active angel investor. So can you tell us a little bit about your portfolio, like some of the projects you are bullish on, apart from Nansen, that you can see in next 3-4 years doing really well?
Yeah, so most of the angel investments I've done are in the crypto or Web3 space. I've done some outside of that. I've done some in renewable energy because of my friends working in that sector, and was very bullish on that theme. eNode is that company, really exciting company working with electric vehicles. But yeah, most of the investments have been in crypto. So Axie Infinity is probably the most successful one, where I was, I think, one of 3 angels in the seed round. There were other investors too, a few VCs, but they actually struggled trying to raise that round because it was a completely different market back then. And of course, it's gone very well with that. They've had, of course, faced tough challenges with the Ronin hack and so on, but it was always like and generally I invest in teams, right? That's the thing that I look for, that if you invest in really solid teams that are balanced, that are hungry, that are capable, that hustle, then they will overcome challenges that they face, and they sometimes might have to pivot. But if you're betting on the team, I think that's just generally, it's a bit of a cliche, but I think it's the best strategy, generally speaking. So with Axie, that was definitely a bet on the team, like great gaming experience in particular, really nice balance of skills in the team, extremely hungry, great at building community. So Axie is one. Yeah, I've done a few other ones that have done quite well. I invested in the top Nordic crypto exchange quite early, called Fieri. Used to be called Mirai X back in the day, and I've backed them in 3 different rounds. I've also invested in LuxRare, the NFT marketplace, in their round, which has been, I think, it's definitely been successful in some ways when it comes to volume and traction and mind share. I think it still has a way to go when it comes to overtaking something like OpenSea or even competing with OpenSea. But it's a really great team working on it, and they've done some really smart things, executing super fast. Yeah, what else? I mean, Element Finance, an interesting one for like fixed yields. What else? I should bring up my list. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things happening in the crypto space. Sabera, which is basically subscription payments on Terra, which they just launched with Delphi Digital for their subscription payments, is an interesting one. Yeah, and so I generally I try to invest in teams, and of course Web3 and crypto is the main area that I feel like I have competence and a good network, and I can help them without spending too much of my own time. Right, my main focus is building Nansen, and I don't generally spend a lot of time. I don't spend any time sourcing deals. It's all inbound typically. So it's, if I have people in my network who are leading around or investing, they might invite me to join, and then I would do a very light DD, to be honest, because I would expect that whoever introduced me has done more DD. But yeah, it's not my main endeavor. And I guess the other motivation for me is I really want the whole industry to grow. So if I can help back teams and be helpful, that's something that is inspiring to me.
Yeah, that makes sense and totally understandable. So one question I had was regarding the team. Like you mentioned, team being like the key element, the key variable. So like in terms of checklist, like some of the things to look for in a team, like how do you go about like some of the mental models you use when evaluating teams?
Mm. Yeah, I think definitely I look at track record. That's one thing. Just have they been able to do something before? And sometimes I find it interesting that people will put in their deck, we raised money for another project before, but it doesn't say like what the project actually did or like how they managed to do it. So that's, for me, I wouldn't say it's a red flag, but I find that a bit peculiar when people do that. Like we previously raised a successful round for another company. Okay, well, how did that company go? And I think having done failures, like having tried something and it failed, is actually a really valuable thing. As long as you understand why it failed. So it's always interesting to understand people's perspective on that. I look for a good balance in the team. So I think it's important that you have different personalities, different skills. And, generally, I think it's good when you have a strong CEO or a leader figure that can take the project forward. Maybe I'll mention one example here. For example, Cypher, which is an interesting Web3 gaming project. When I first spoke with Tim, who's the CEO there, it was interesting because it sort of went against some of the stuff that I often look for. Like if I invest in a Web3 gaming company or project, I would want to see more gaming experience in the team. I don't think it's a good thing if you just see a crypto company or crypto founders with a crypto background who now suddenly are doing gaming. I think that's really strange. That's like you and me going out to make a Hollywood movie. Like we don't have I mean, maybe you made a Hollywood movie. I don't know. I probably not, right? We just don't know how to do it. And it's similar with gaming. Gaming is like a super complicated industry, like to get right, super competitive. You need to know what you're doing. And so with Tin, he actually doesn't have that gaming experience, which was a bit of a red flag for me. But then he's a very eloquent founder. He has a strong vision, and he has executed super well in other industries before. So that's why I was excited to back him and that project in particular. And then I guess, another example is Wallet Connect, which I also backed from the beginning. You might have used it when you scan a QR code to connect your wallet on different blockchains and different dApps. Pedro as well, the founder there, is just a super strong builder, has a clear vision, is extremely technically competent, and I just think he's someone that I would love to back, almost like no matter what he does. But I'm also a big fan of the Wallet Connect product itself, right? So I think it's good to have a strong leader who can stand out. So if you have a few of these elements, like you have a strong leader who can step up, but you have a well-balanced founder team with different skills, different personalities, and of course, at the end of the day, they should be working on something that has a large enough total addressable market in the future. It doesn't have to be today, but in the future, and that has ideally some kind of well-established moat and business model or tokenomics that makes sense.
Yeah, like how do you go about thinking about moat in crypto and Web3? This is something I sometimes struggle with,
Mm.
because
Mm.
like everything is open source. Like I'm talking about Web3 crypto, like rather than some of the equity company. Like I feel like everything is forkable, everything is open source. Like apart from network effect and composability, it's difficult to kind of see competitive advantages accruing to some of the projects. Like, so how do you think about competitive advantages and moat in general with regards to some of the projects?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that moat is something that I wouldn't say it's overlooked in crypto, but it's just like a very different world than if you look at traditional sort of Web2 companies and so on. But I do think there are some great examples to look at in crypto where there is a strong moat. And the first one that comes to mind is Lido Finance. So I'm also a DAO member there from the beginning. And if you just look at the liquidity, so what they, just to give the context, right? Lido Finance is basically a decentralized liquid staking protocol. So if you want to stake Ether for Ethereum 2.0, but you don't want to run your own validator and lock up the Ether, the 32 Ether, until the merge has happened and the steps after that where you can actually get liquidity again for those Ether, you can instead deposit any amount of Ether into Lido, and what you get back is effectively a staked Ether token. And this token is representative of your proportional ownership of all the Ether that's sitting in the Lido pool. And then you can take this staked Ether and you can provide liquidity for staked Ether versus Ether in Curve, for example. And that's a very nice pool and a nice protocol because it's optimized for stable assets, right? So now you're providing liquidity for it. So you're both getting yields from staking Ether with Lido, but you're also getting yields from being a liquidity provider with the liquidity incentives on top of that. And the reason Lido has such a strong moat, in my opinion, is that just makes it the most liquid platform for liquid staking, right? It means
Yeah.
that the slippage will be
And they don't
lowest.
just do it, and they just don't do it for Ethereum. They also do it for Solana,
That's right.
Luna. I think also introducing Polkadot. So also gives
That's
you
right.
index level exposure to the whole crypto sector.
Exactly. So that also makes a very interesting project, right? Because it's almost like maybe, I mean, of course, this is not investment advice, right? But maybe it's an interesting way to get exposure to like staking, just generally. If you're bullish on staking, then Lido is like the infrastructure provider, basically doing staking across different blockchains, right? So that makes it very interesting. But even if you look at Ethereum alone, the moat here is that it's super hard for another project to just achieve that same amount of liquidity. And because of that, the next person who's going to stake their Ether, where are they going to go? They're going to go to Lido because they know that the liquidity is so good. And that creates even more liquidity. So you get this like incredible liquidity feedback loop and a network effect, which I think is just, it's they're doing something like 20% of all staked Ether at this point.
I think more. I
Which
think
is
more now.
it might be more. I mean, I should know this. It's in Nansen. We have a dashboard for it. I should know the numbers. But yeah, it's a huge amount, right? Um, I think you're right. I think it's something like maybe it might be 30% now. I think they just crossed 3.2 million Ether staked, and it's 10 or 11 million staked in total, I think. So that's one example. Another example, which is quite different, is OpenSea. I think OpenSea has incredible network effect and an incredible moat. And LooksRare is an attempt to sort of attack that moat and I think OpenSea has proven to be quite resilient on that attack. Like LooksRare literally is like paying you to trade on their marketplace, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah. I
and
feel like
yeah,
I feel like the biggest advantage OpenSea has is that because of the back end and front end, the developers they have, like it's very difficult to have different categories of NFT, have all of this trades and metadata, and then you filter it through. Whilst in the case of LooksRare, it's more of a community driven. So I
yeah,
think there could be issues with regards to coordination, and kind of also like shipping all of these technical uh, front end and back end stuff that could be done quickly in terms of OpenSea. And OpenSea also has an advantage in terms of time, right? Like a couple of years ahead in terms of designing all of these systems to kind of take advantage of.
yeah. I agree with you. I think, and that's another interesting discussion, like when it makes sense to decentralize the project versus having more centralized leadership. And yeah, you're right. Like OpenSea, although look, the sort of the leadership or execution on LooksRay is still very centralized, right? There's not much voting going on certain things yet, and there's always a path to this decentralization. You can't go decentralized from day one, I think, typically. But that should be OpenSea's edge, that they can execute quicker because they have a more centralized leadership and centralized sort of governance, which in theory should give them a faster time to market and faster execution time. But I think when it comes to why their moat is so strong, I think this is unique also to NFTs. Because if you think about it from the user perspective, if you like, it doesn't matter that much if you buy Bitcoin on Coinbase or Binance. And the slippage, I mean, actually the trading fees are pretty different. But in terms of like slippage, you want to just make sure that there's enough liquidity on the order books. It doesn't mean that like Binance needs to have all of the Bitcoin sitting with them, or Coinbase needs to have all of the Bitcoin in order to be useful for us as traders. When it comes to NFTs, you kind of want one marketplace to just have all of the selection. Because if you're looking to buy a pudgy penguin and you're looking through all the different traits, you want to make sure that you have the full overview, right? You have all the traits, and you have all the if I'm looking at the floor price, for example, I want to make sure that first of all that I have the lowest floor floor price possible, but I also want to make sure that the floor selection can be quite good, so I can pick different pudgy penguins at that floor price. As soon as you only have a fraction of the market, I think the user experience deteriorates a lot. Like the floor price might be too high, and also the selection of items that are actually being listed for sale is going to be much lower. That's what I think the challenge is for LooksRare to be up against OpenSea. And I think an interesting play is now with Gem, the
Yeah,
aggregator.
the aggregation. Yeah.
And so that's where that maybe is more of a challenge for OpenSea, because if users now start going to Gem as their first destination, that's what I do now actually. Like if I want to
Yeah.
sweep the floor, I would just go to Gem because it has good indexing and it has good execution as well. And so that's maybe a more interesting, and maybe that's how you get past the moat that OpenSea has at the end of the day.
Yeah. I can kind of imagine like going forward, like having all of these aggregators, like vertical specific, like for art, for collection, for real estate, and all of these different aggregators for all of these different vertical. And I think that can become challenging for OpenSea because at the moment OpenSea I think it's good for art and collection, but I think for digital real estate or gaming item, it's the user experience isn't that great.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think also there's going to be, unless they come up with, I don't know, different user interfaces for different types of NFTs, there's probably going to be some kind of unbundling of OpenSea, just like Craigslist was unbundled as a marketplace in the US for services and goods, right? So I think you will likely have one dominant music NFTs marketplace, because music NFTs, you don't consume them in the same way as profile pics, which is kind of what OpenSea is optimized for. And you're right, with real estate, that's a different thing. You need to have a different type of user experience for it. So I think OpenSea is kind of like the default platform, like the Craigslist or the eBay for like NFTs. But yeah, I agree with you. It's probably going to be like verticals and specialization and an unbundling of OpenSea that happens over the next few years.
All right, Alex, just to be cognizant of time and to conclude the podcast, my final question for you would be regarding some of the tips as angel investors. So, let's say if somebody who doesn't have an extensive network or is not a founder himself or herself, how can they get into some of these deals, or how can they strive to become a good angel, like strong angel investor?
Yeah, I think it does depend a bit on your starting point. And so, many people have done really well in crypto, and they've gone from maybe a few $1,000s to millions of dollars in crypto in a short amount of time. But that doesn't mean that they managed to build up that network, the social network piece. And it might not also mean that doesn't mean that they necessarily have the research capabilities, right? So in the fear of plugging our own product too much, I would probably say Nansen Alpha here is a good place to start for that segment. It's a bit of a plug, but I do think that's a great start. And I want to be very clear that Nansen Alpha is expensive for most people. Most of our customers feel like it's too cheap, in the sense that the value you get out of it and also the exclusivity you get, right? It's not like you actually sign up for Nansen Alpha and you're straight in. You actually have a chat with our team to see if it makes sense. And in many cases, we've turned customers away because we feel like it's not actually the best use of their capital. So if you have $100,000 in crypto, I don't think it makes sense for you to sign up with Nansen Alpha. But if you're managing maybe millions of users, then it could make sense. If you're starting from a more maybe humble starting point, I think the cool thing about crypto is that you can learn a lot on your own. Like if you just follow the right people on crypto Twitter, if you join the right Discords, you can build up your own social network as well. And you can actually, we have a free version of Dunst now that you can test out in terms of just educating yourself more on the information side of things. We also have some cool stuff that's coming in the next few weeks when it comes to connecting with people as well on the platform. So that could be a good way to just build out your own social network. But I think at the end of the day, if you have, the right information and you have the right research capabilities and you have the right social network around you, that's the way you can succeed as a crypto investor, both for angel investments and also for token investments or NFT investments. So that's my mental framework and trying to build out those capabilities over time.
Uh, Thank you, Alex. It was fun chatting with you. I had a great time. Thank you for coming to the 100X show.
Thank you so much for having me.